Hello, my name is Callum. Welcome to Stupid Canada, the show where we take all the things that happened throughout this week and talk about how stupid they are. We got a very stupid week this week, starting off with King Stupid himself, Doug Ford. The Premier of Ontario, also the Premier Idiot of Ontario, is attacking the federal government on its policy of safe supply, a program which supplies community members with safer drug supplies to prevent injuries and death. In a press conference, Premier Ford said that this makes the Canadian government, quote, the biggest drug dealer. Which is hilarious, because if you grew up in Etobicoke in the 80s, you might have said that Doug Ford is the biggest drug dealer, which many people have. I'm serious. You can't make this shit up. The government is being criticized for being a drug dealer by actual drug dealer Doug Ford. I don't know, maybe Doug's doing a takes one to know one kind of thing. Or maybe he's trying to stamp out the competition. Doug's like, don't sell on my turf, lib. Despite commissioning not one, but two reports, both of which concluded that the Safe Supply program is effective and should continue, Premier Ford still said Safe Supply is not effective and shouldn't continue. Then he covered up the mic with his hand, leaned to the side, and said, hit me up if you want the good shit. Next up, also in Ontario, we got Queen Stupid, Michelle Ferreri. Holy shit, we're stacked this week. Actually, come to think of it, Michelle might be the Premier Idiot of Ontario. You got competition, Doug. The Ontario YouTuber turned Conservative MP has gotten herself in some hot water. And I don't mean she's been drunk live streaming in the bathtub again.
Elizabeth Taylor nailed it, right? She always said, girl, have a drink, put on your lipstick, get up and get at it. You know, that's not exactly the quote, but you know what I'm saying.
That literally never gets old. It will always be funny. Let's see what Michelle did this time.
A conservative lawmaker has walked back a social media post she had blamed higher costs for human trafficking. Michelle Ferreri claimed the cost of living crisis has driven parents to traffic their own children.
Jesus Christ. Hey, I get it. Kids are expensive. Clothes, toys, Lunchables. It would be much easier to pay all these bills for my kids if I just sell my kids. Michelle says survival leads to crime and ultimately blames the Liberals and NDP, which is unsurprising. What is Justin Trudeau not responsible for at this point? We got inflation, the price of housing, forest fires, and now people selling their kids. I just can't believe Justin Trudeau is making all these people sell their kids. I mean, this is crazy. It didn't take long for Michelle to delete this post and walk back the comments after being questioned about it by the Canadian press, that is.
That post is now deleted from X. In a separate statement today, Ferreri said it was inartfully worded, adding that a cost of living crisis is in no way an excuse for human trafficking.
Wow. Thanks for the clarification, Michelle. By the way, I don't like human trafficking. Please don't put in the news that I like human trafficking. Also, inartful wording? No. Inartful wording is using the word inartful like it's an actual word. Saying that people can't afford groceries unless they sell their kids is fucking insane. And here's the thing, your wording doesn't actually have to be artful. Nobody expects you to be a fucking poet, Michelle. They just expect you not to lie. But that expectation might be a tad high for Michelle, as this isn't the first time her words have been inartful, as long as we're using inartful as a euphemism for dishonest. Michelle also once claimed that she was an archaeologist who went to university on full scholarship. Turns out her archaeology career was a school field trip, and her scholarship? Employee discount because her mom worked at the school. Michelle also once inartfully claimed to save a woman's life when paramedics refused to do so. And she once inartfully described herself as a single mother of 6 children.
I thank the honourable member for his question. It's unfortunate you don't know my situation as a single mom with 6 children.
But she has 3 kids and 3 stepchildren with her partner. So if you're wondering why Michelle is on parliamentary record stating she has 6 kids, but now only has 3, it's not because she was one of the people selling her children into human trafficking. Even though I'm gonna tell everybody that's exactly what happened and chalk it up to inartful wording. Good trick. Thanks, Michelle. Anyways, Michelle has developed somewhat of a pattern of inartfulness. But her most recent inartful words, unlike those other examples, don't serve to boost her own ego. They serve to deliberately misinform the public about the cost of living crisis. Sort of like that time she inartfully said her constituents were eating cat food because they can't afford groceries.
During the election, I knocked on one man's door, and he showed me what he was eating for dinner. Cat food.
No groceries? Selling your kids so you can afford to eat cat food? Holy shit, Peterborough sounds like a straight up dystopia. But if you believe the Conservative Party leader, Pierre Poilievre, the entire country is a dystopia.
Life costs more, work doesn't pay, housing costs have doubled, crime, chaos, drugs, and disorder reign in our streets.
Violent offenders, career car thieves. After 9 years of Trudeau and the NDP Liberals. Homicides, major increases in overdoses, criminal, sexual assault, the guns and drugs,
A victim shot dead,
firearm offenses.
shot to death. That is a normal day.
We are not in a recession. We are in a depression, a Justin Trudeau depression. After 8 years of Trudeau, everything costs more.
Doubled the national debt, doubled the rent, doubled mortgage payments.
The price of coffee,
We're bidding up the cost of the goods we buy,
not just coffee, Justin. Bacon,
increase the cost of our businesses and workers.
milk to put in your coffee, it's up 7%. The country's falling apart.
This tactic is the Conservative Party's attempt at locking down the working class vote. Fear-mongering about how horrible Canada is, lying if they have to, and blaming the whole thing on Justin Trudeau. A message that actually tends to resonate because people are suffering from high costs. And the sitting Prime Minister is an excellent person to point the finger at. Like, we all know the Prime Minister has an inflation knob in his office that he just keeps turning up. Like, just turn it down, man. What are you doing? But this approach often causes problems because the Conservative Party has no fucking idea how to appeal to the working class. Even when they're saying everything is terrible and Trudeau's fault, they still manage to mess up so bad they have to erase the evidence. Like trying to relate to their own voter base by saying, wow, it sucks you guys are so poor that you have to sell your kids into human trafficking rings. Fuck Trudeau, am I right? Vote for me. But when they try to deliver any other kind of messaging, it's also so embarrassing that they delete that too. Which brings us to Pierre Poilievre's now deleted speech video thing. Sorry, cowboy hat Pierre. We unlocked a new Pierre skin, guys. Sheriff Pierre. Doug Dimmadome cosplay Pierre. It's giving there's a snake in my boot. I love this cowboy hat. And this speech, uploaded by the Conservative Party social media accounts, got a lot of pushback, even in international news, particularly for its use of stock footage from countries that aren't Canada, including images of American school buses and Russian fighter jets. But I honestly think the slap togetherness of this video complements the indecipherable meaningless of the speech itself really well. This speech is so bad, I honestly thought it was written by ChatGPT or something, especially since the Conservatives are coming hot off a Twitter bot scandal. Bots, AI speeches, I started connecting all the dots. It just made sense. But then I realized if the Conservative Party wanted a cold, seemingly inhuman speech littered with logical inconsistencies, they would just get Pierre to write it himself. And since it got deleted, I'm just gonna play the video in full, even though I assume everyone's seen it or heard it by now. It's like 3 minutes long, so just skip through it if you don't wanna experience that again.
It's easy to forget what home and hope look like. So let me paint the picture of school children, boys and girls, being welcomed by their teacher at the front of the school as they walk in to learn about reading, writing, arithmetic, and our proud history. Before walking in the door, though, they look back at Dad in his pickup truck who's dropped them off. He rolls down that suburban street with his windows open, in the school zone, driving slowly so that he can hear that beautiful crackling sound of hammers pounding nails into Canadian lumber on newly built and affordable Canadian homes. When he gets to the gas station, he fills his tank with affordable and lower taxed Canadian-made energy. He makes his way out into the countryside where he's going to go and service a well, and he looks out his windows and sees those big, prestigious barley or canola fields, the combines out there doing their work, the cattle grazing on the countryside producing the best food from the best farmers anywhere on earth. And he looks up and what does he see? He sees a brand new fighter jet. They're doing a training mission in the sky, getting ready to defend our home and native land. The same plane is soon seen from a university campus where kids are hustling off to class, maybe a bit late, having just procrastinated on that university essay, knowing that when they get to class, they will have the chance to debate freely and fearlessly without worry of being censored. Later in the day, that whole family of the student, that welder, the kids, moms and dads come together for a big family celebration because it's been 10 years since one of the adult kids in the family has been sober and overcome his drug addiction. And they gather around the table to have a big, beautiful dinner to celebrate some wonderful venison that was shot with totally legal Canadian firearms. And they sit and they talk about their beautiful past, but even more so about their optimistic future. And as the little ones conk off and it's time to take them home, Grandma and Grandpa see them off to the car, and the car leaves the driveway, and they turn and they look west. And what do they see? They see wheat, foothills, Rockies, and a big blue twilight sky. And they look each other in the eye and they say, "We're home." These are our people. That is our country. This is our home, your home, my home, our home. Let's bring it home.
So stupid. Okay. And as stupid as this speech and video was, which is why it got deleted, as well as its surprising lack of mention of Justin Trudeau, it speaks to that larger theme in the conservative strategy. This fake appeal to the working class. The dad dropping the kids off at school.
They look back at Dad in his pickup truck who's dropped them off.
Even though they took the bus. Which means the dad's the bus driver, working class, when he's not being a well serviceman, that is.
Makes his way out into the countryside where he's going to go and service a well.
Double working class, but at the end, he's also a welder?
That welder.
Triple working class? Holy shit, this guy does more work in a day than Pierre's done in his entire life. Like, either this guy works 3 different trades, or Pierre thinks a guy who services wells is called a welder, which is amazing, to be honest. It should be called that. This might be the first time I've ever agreed with Pierre about anything. The working class imagery continues. The construction workers making that beautiful crackle. This is my Pierre Poilievre impression. The construction workers making that beautiful crackling sound of pounding nails into Canadian lumber. Holy fuck, how is that a quote? How is that a quote? The farmer with the combine that actually appears to be a tractor. The single mother of 6 children who sells 3 to a human trafficking ring to put food on the table for the other 3. Hey, Michelle. The electrician who sucks up lightning through his fingertips. Oh, never mind. That's actually from another speech.
The electrician who captures lightning from the sky.
The electricity from the sky. Electrician who captures lightning, runs it through a copper wire to light up your home, tames the most fierce force in nature.
Do you see? Do you see how frequently he tries to relate to working people and just can't get it right? And of course, Pierre's speech needs to include mentions to the cost of living, a working class issue, something he's never actually had to endure as a career politician, but is clearly a major focus for Canadians. So, you know, Pierre talks about the affordable gas and the affordable car, affordable homes. He mentions the 35-year-old living in his mom's basement. Oh, never mind. That's also from another speech.
If you're 35 and you're living in your mom's basement, how do you even bring home a date?
Point is, the Conservatives are doing a lot to kind of nail down the working class vote. Like, it's clearly their primary goal right now. Even though the Canadian Labour Congress essentially says Pierre is bad for workers, citing his track record of being bad for workers, fighting labor unions and repeatedly voting to send striking workers back to work with low-wage settlements, and boasting about wanting to create union-free workplaces. Holy shit, this guy sucks. Canadian Labour Congress, which is the central labor body of Canada, continues. Despite his recent rhetoric, Mr. Poilievre hasn't had a change of heart since becoming party leader. Over the past year, he and his party have done everything to block pro-worker legislation. But it shouldn't take the Labour Congress to point this out to make it obvious. Because despite his new and improved image as a working class guy who wears a cowboy hat, the mask comes off. Or the hat, I should say. And he goes full anti-worker. Like in this speech to employees of a trucking company in Elliott Lake. This surprisingly still not deleted clip uploaded to Pierre's Twitter starts off with a really good question from someone in the crowd.
What are you going to do for parts of Canada that were experiencing decline even prior to Trudeau and had that sped up further under Trudeau? Typically rural regions such as this.
And this is great. The guy sees that Pierre is immediately struggling to answer the question, so he apologizes for asking such a hard question.
Sorry for the hard question.
No, it's a good question. It's an important question.
Pierre gives a brief answer about unlocking Canada's resources, how the Ring of Fire in Northern Ontario could do for Northern Ontarian industry, what the oil sands did for Northern Alberta.
It's what the Ring of Fire could do for Northern Ontario. And there'll be massive spin-offs that will ripple out all the way hundreds and hundreds of miles away from the mines themselves.
And then pivots to tax reform.
We need a tax reform that rewards investment again, so that when businesses generate a profit, it's advantageous for them to reinvest it rather than just pay it out. And that's what my tax reform is going to do. And I want to get Steve and others, Mike, to advise me on how we could best structure that so that you could reinvest more working capital in your business here and beat your American competitors.
First of all, this couldn't get more blatant. He actually turns away from the crowd to talk to Steve and Mike. Fuck these grunt workers asking questions. I'm gonna talk to the suits about big brain shit. You guys wouldn't understand. Because his solutions aren't for the workers, they're for the bosses. Both of his solutions, unlocking Canada's resources resulting in job creation, and tax reform for corporations, isn't shit that benefits workers. It's shit that benefits corporations, the bosses. He's not gonna change the material conditions of the working class by doing anything material for the working class. You know, the people he's talking to. Unlocking Canada's resources like the Ring of Fire, which as far as I can tell, is already happening, might create more jobs. But Pierre isn't going to do anything to the benefit of the people working those jobs. He's not going to raise wages. He's not going to support labor unions. He's not going to do anything for workers. He's going to lower the corporate tax rate so businesses can retain more of their profits for themselves. Where have I heard that before? Oh yeah, it's literally trickle-down economics. Trickle down!
Ripple out.
The Reagan-era nonsense theory that suggests more money in the hands of the ownership class, in this case in the form of corporate tax cuts, will just trickle down.
Ripple out.
To the working class. Magically, I guess. But Callum, Pierre isn't that stupid. Surely there's some kind of historical basis to support the trickle-down theory. Yes, he is. And no, there's not. Reaganomics have been tried and tested by, you guessed it, the Ronald Reagan administration in the United States. An administration that saw a yearly decrease in real hourly wages. And the money the government lost in tax cuts, plus any money the government actually generated, amounted to a net loss. So it literally did the opposite of what it was intended to do over an 8-year period. So they had time to test it, pretty long term, okay? Every year they're like, okay, any minute now, it'll probably start trickling down really soon. Actually, if Pierre was American in the 80s, he'd be talking about Ronald Reagan like he talks about Trudeau.
After 8 years of
Ronald Reagan.
everything costs more.
Except he wouldn't, actually, because he's apparently a fan of Reagan's stupid-ass ideology, which historically, and I can't stress this enough, does not work. In the past, Pierre has referred to this same strategy as bottom-up economics.
Bottom-up capitalism.
Which is so funny to me because it's just trickle down, but the name is reversed. If I say it backwards, nobody's gonna figure it out. I'm a fucking genius. Trickle down,
Ripple out, bottom up.
So the big question is, why is this kind of working? Polling, which is not perfect, but to be considered, would indicate a huge rise in conservative popularity as of late. Most notably with workers. The same people that Pierre has such a shitty track record with. Do I think people's political unawareness contributes to this? Absolutely. I think if a lot of Pierre's supporters looked into his track record on a lot of these issues, they'd jump ship. But the messaging matters, and that's what's convincing people. I mean, I think we can all understand why the Liberal Party seems like it isn't pro-worker enough, especially in light of recent events regarding railroad workers, which we'll talk about. But there is absolutely no reason the Conservative Party should be using pro-working class language, because that's all it is, language, and seeing success doing it, when the NDP is right there. Like, you guys are supposed to be the Workers' Party. What are we doing? An article I saw being passed around a few weeks ago was this one by David Moscrop. Is it time for Singh to go? Referring, of course, to Jagmeet Singh, leader of the federal NDP. And it does a really good job of explaining that the NDP's consistent decline since Jack Layton is possibly due to the fact that the party just isn't socialist enough, as its roots always have been. And maybe the party shifting towards the center seemed like it was the way to go in the past, but they need to modernize their approach. Just gonna read this little section here because it's a banger. Reviving the NDP will take the work of years, but that work must be grounded in a long-term strategy that starts with an emphasis on a return to the party's original commitments to class struggle. The NDP voted to remove references to socialism from its constitution in 2013, as then leader Mulcair put it, use the language that resonates with a wider public in Canada. Just over 10 years later, the word socialism is more potent than it's been in decades, as the country struggles with an affordability crisis, corporate depredation, wealth hoarding, and plenty more. I absolutely agree the NDP needs to be more socialist. In fact, I think they need to be aggressively socialist. They're the Socialist Party. They need to start acting like it. Because right now, there's no legitimate representation on the left in Canada. All the political parties are some varying degree of center-right. And it's allowed the Conservatives, of all parties, to co-opt the language of left-wing populism, creating this pro-worker facade. And the whole thing, honestly, has just been insane to witness. Like, what the fuck is going on here? This feels like a good time to talk about the rail strike. For those who don't know, the workers of CN Rail and CPKC Rail are striking. This comes after a lockout by the companies after failing to reach an agreement at the bargaining table, essentially forcing the workers into a strike, which they were prepared to do anyway. And then the rail companies freaked the fuck out and asked the government to step in to force the workers back to work. And now the government has called for binding arbitration, a process where a neutral mediator arrives at a solution for both parties. Workers return back to work by Monday morning, after striking for just 2 days. So basically the bosses were negotiating terms with the workers, a constitutional right of workers known as collective bargaining. And then the bosses didn't like how the negotiations were going, so they stopped the trains and locked the workers out. Stay with me for a second here. And then the workers were like, okay, I guess we're locked out, so we won't go to work. You guys locked us out of work. We can't go to work. And then the bosses were like, holy shit, this is gonna cripple the fucking economy. We need to get the government involved and get these guys back to work. And the government was like, yeah, fuck collective bargaining. Again, guys, a constitutional right. Send these guys back to work. Negotiations are over. We'll appoint someone to decide for you. So instead of the workers and bosses arriving at an agreement cooperatively, like what's supposed to happen, again, guys, constitutional right, the bosses get to essentially end negotiations by force with the help of the government. Like, this is fucking crazy. To explain why the need for negotiations in this case is so important, let's dive into some of the working conditions at Canada's two biggest railway companies.
Already overworked train crews are being asked to work even more hours, and the union says it doesn't want that to lead to another deadly rail disaster like the one in Lac-Mégantic. Right now, they're on call almost 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Workers have 2 hours to report to work if they're called in. And they're not told until they get in how long they'll have to work, which in some cases could be a few days.
That's right, days. Imagine your boss calls you into work in the middle of the night, makes you work for 3 days, and you have to sleep at the office. and then you try to negotiate the terms of that agreement, and they lock you out of your job, turn it into a national scandal, and get the government involved. Someone's not getting a world's best boss mug for Christmas this year, I'll tell you that. Here's Union President Francois Laporte explaining why it's probably not a good idea to have people operating trains while staying up for days at a time, because apparently that's something that needs to be explained. Everywhere across the country, you see trains passing by carrying chemical products, energy, oil. We don't want to see another Lac-Mégantic accident. We want people who operate the train, people who are not fatigued. Lac-Mégantic accident, by the way, was a major railway accident in 2013 which killed 47 people.
Explosion after explosion after a runaway train carrying crude oil partially derailed in the center of town. Police are only giving a rough estimate of the number missing because fire and risk of more explosions have kept them from the worst hit area.
So if I'm getting this right, it sounds like the union wants workers to be safe and people not to die. Okay, but there's probably more to this story. Let's hear what the railway companies have to say about this. This is the spokesperson for CN Rail, Jonathan Abacassis.
One of the railways, CN, says the union is actually more concerned about money.
The first page of their demands is all about wages.
Oh, dear Lord. How dare they? These guys shouldn't care about money? Money? Being fairly compensated for their work? They should be doing it for the love of the game. They shouldn't even get paid. Rail workers should be a volunteer position as far as I'm concerned. This guy, Jonathan Abacassis, is on the right track, I think. And I'm sure Jonathan makes a very reasonable salary for his anti-union media relations job at CN Rail. Let's have a look. Yahoo Finance lists Abacassis as a key executive of CN Rail. All of the salaries made public on this 10-person list are over $1 million. And that's before all those $1 million bonuses, of course. Jonathan's salary isn't listed here, but we can assume it's similar to the others on the list. 2.62 million, 1.42 million, 1.3 million, 1 million, 1 million. So Jonathan, like other senior colleagues of CN Rail listed here, probably has a roughly $1 million salary. And here he is, on the news, chastising workers for wanting more money as well as a safer work environment. When safety does become an issue, as workers are telling you it will, you and the other key executives aren't the ones that will experience the fallout of that. The injuries, the deaths, the legal implications. But you are in a position to profit from ignoring these safety issues. Those Christmas bonuses aren't gonna look quite as nice if we start reducing hours now, are they? So here's a question, CBC. Why the fuck are you even interviewing this guy? We already know his position. He's getting paid to slander the union and make workers look bad. This is like asking George Foreman what type of grill to buy. He's only gonna have one answer. And people are like, oh, I just don't know who's telling the truth. The guys operating the railroad say the railroad is unsafe. But the guy getting paid millions of dollars to say the railroad is safe says the railroad is safe. I just don't know who to believe. Also, the fact that CN Rail has this spokesperson lying and saying that safety isn't a concern of the union, but self-admittedly also wanting to increase hours is insane. This is crazy. Clearly, safety is a primary concern. And so is money. Because this smug asshole shouldn't be one of 10 people in the whole company being appropriately compensated. And yes, this picture was taken the same day as that interview. He did that interview and was like, fuck the strike, fuck the workers, I'm the best, that'll be $1 million, please. And then he took this smug ass picture. Look at this, bro's flexing the Apple Watch. He's crushing unions and flexing the Apple Watch, guys. I'm sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. I hate this guy, I hate him. We're beefing now. I have beef with the media relations guy from CN Rail. Let's see how all the super pro-worker political parties feel about all this. The Liberals, siding with the bosses. Helping them do this shit, actually. Conservatives, literally haven't said a word. The PPC, let's see, I got a quote here. Is this about immigrants? Because if this isn't about immigrants, I don't care. Okay. NDP, actually joining the picket line. See, and this is what makes me think Jagmeet is actually kind of based, and then I'm not sure that I 100% agree with the overall message of David Moskrop's article, which is that Jagmeet Singh personally has to go. Like, sometimes I still have faith that he can take back the working class populism vacuum that the Conservatives have usurped. Because occasionally I see the little glimmer on the horizon, like this. When Pierre and the Conservatives are completely silent on the rail strike, but Jagmeet Singh slams the Liberals for being anti-worker and joins the picket line, it's obvious who's truly pro-worker. But it's also obvious the NDP could be doing way more. Like, yo, if you guys want to seem really pro-worker, this is the time to do it. I mean, and this is going to be controversial, I continue to find myself saying that Jagmeet Singh needs to pull the plug on the confidence agreement with the Liberals. Like, just to let workers know he stands on business. But I'm increasingly confident he will never do that. Because this isn't even the first time something like this has happened and the Liberals allowed some shady shit to happen to workers. And Jagmeet Singh, with the full power of the supply and confidence agreement, was kind of just standing there like, hey guys, please don't do that. Please be a little more pro-worker. Come on, Justin. For me, for you, buddy, please. And I realize the NDP is in a precarious position as far as actually pulling the plug on the confidence agreement, because it'll trigger an election and the Conservatives could win a majority government and then all workers suffer.
Trickle down, ripple out, bottom up.
But the fact this just keeps happening and the supposedly pro-worker party is just allowing it to continue is really not a good look. Like, this is right up the NDP's alley, but they're not doing enough. And it's so frustrating. It's really upsetting, actually. And I know people are going to disagree with this because if the NDP does anything, you risk the Conservatives winning. But at this point, guys, as far as like what's good for workers, we know the Conservatives aren't, but the Liberals aren't either. And the Conservatives are winning that worker support and the NDP is not. So by pulling the plug, it really does show that no, there is an alternative for workers and it's not the Conservative Party, because it's not. But at this point, the NDP is letting people believe that it is. That's a problem. Canada needs true pro-worker socialist representation. And as long as we don't have that, people will continue to exploit the working class vote. When there's no real pro-worker competition, they control the narrative. And right now, the narrative is workers are selling their kids to afford cat food because Justin Trudeau made groceries illegal or something. And I hate to break it to you, Michelle Ferreri won't be the vanguard of the revolution. But that poses the question, who the fuck will?
Huge thank you to my supporters over on Patreon, whether you're actively subscribed or just taking a break or decidedly never subscribing again. In any case, I thank you for the support. I would like to do one of these every week. It's a lot of work and it's just me, so you guys financially supporting the operation, hugely beneficial. So big thank yous to Brian, Cameron, Roma, Jillian, M, Laura Lee, Fahad, Margaret, Mike, Andy, Maya, Colleen, David, Deborah, Derek, Left of Boom, Linda, Rob, SD, Angelique, Colin, Dean, Elaine, Faulty, Ian, Jean-Paul, Jeffrey, Jennifer, Jeff, Jody, Joshua, Lori, Mickey, Mohammed, Vern, Liz, Norma, Sarah, Stephanie, Sean the Bomb, Susan, Margot, Sal, Maurice and Marion, and Yvonne. Thank you all so much. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best.